this is why we're all here today. Because Avion Parker was brutally shot down, much too young. Now you may not love that he was part of a gang, and maybe you think he was living a somewhat high-risk lifestyle, but he did not deserve what happened to him on September 12th, 2023. He was coming out, going to leave early so he could get home to go to bed so he could go to work the next day. Did he have guns on him? Yes. Yes, he did. But he didn't start anything. He was playing video games. And then he left. That's it. Out with his brother. He had no idea what was going to happen next. And that's why we're all here. And it isn't just about Elijah and Avion. You know, if you think about the events of September 12th, and you've heard so much information about that, think of all those bullets flying around. People like Nick and Yolanda who have children, flying through their apartment, barely missing their own children. That is the situation in the Villa Capri shooting on September 12th. And we're fortunate that we had the benefit of being able to hear from Elijah, because if the circumstances were slightly altered, he would have been gone as well. That's why we're here. So what's the backdrop of this? You've heard a lot about it. What is the backdrop? Why in the world would a group of 4 young individuals drive to a location and just shoot the crap out of it? And it's all over this ridiculous gang nonsense. These gang dynamics that are brewing under the surface. We have allegiance to this group and not that group, and don't disrespect my group. We know Aston Walker posted a BMG video on September 11, 2023. Aston admits that. Of course, he denies being gang affiliated. Not a surprise. We heard from Sergeant Deshays, who has spent 10 years studying gang behavior in Fort Wayne. And he says, guess what? Nobody wants to admit it. They don't admit they're in a gang. That's not the way this works. They don't want to talk about it with law enforcement. There is a veil of secrecy around gang activities when it comes to law enforcement. Of course, ironically, that veil does not apply to social media, because that's the way that they communicate this rivalry to each other. So law enforcement knew about this video. They're ready for this. They see this video and they know it's taunting. We'll talk about the BSG responsive video after the shooting later, but we know that's taunting too. These are the way they communicate with each other, these rival gangs. And through girls, right? We see that in this case through Olivia. But this is the backdrop. This is what triggers this whole thing. BSG doesn't like this video. They're offended. They're disrespected. They're insulted, whatever it is. And they spend the next day making a plan, or actually that day making a plan to retaliate. And that's what this is. It's a retaliatory shooting. How do we know that this guy right here sitting at the table is part of that gang who did it? We have a lot of different avenues of information that tell us that. We know he's the guy who set the whole thing up. He arranges for Olivia to contact BMG that night, figure out where they are and who is there and what's going on. We know that he and Chris then arranged to get Serena's car. Serena has no idea what they're going to be doing with it. Maybe she could deduce, maybe she and Olivia could probably have realized this was not a good idea. But he goes and gets that car, and then they go strolling in Villa Capri an hour prior to the murder. What are they doing? Well, unfortunately, we have the benefit of a video they created for social media that makes it really clear what they're doing. They're looking for these boys so they can shoot them. Then we know that the defendant turns his phone off exactly at the time of the shooting, then says he's going to drop guns off, and we know he's connected to the gun that Corian Parks has because it's his sister driving that car who did not own that gun, that takes Corian and that gun from the shooting. 2 other guns we don't recover, potentially 3, but that one we do. And then we know that they bring back Serena's car with bullet holes after the shooting in Villa Capri. So there's a lot of different avenues, but let's break them down. Let's talk about his part in all of this. This is the bottom line, and it's really not in dispute. We know that he is with Chris, Lamont, and Corian on September 12th. These are the 3 people that he is charged with acting in concert with. And we know that they work together to kill the Parker brothers, to try and kill them. They're successful with one and unsuccessful, thankfully, with the other. And this ambush they're planning starts, we can see it in its infancy at 7:30 p.m. on September 11th. for this defendant to start working on a plan to retaliate. We see these texts. This is the text between him and Olivia. This is TJ Gang. Who is his friends? He's talking about who's there. He wants pictures and names of friends of the BMG from Olivia. He's using her as a conduit to communicate with the other gang and figure out what they're doing and where they're at. And unfortunately, she falls for it and does it. This text, which we talked about with Detective Johnson today, and I think the most prominent part is this, is she says he ain't say shit about a boogie. Guess what that means? Somebody has asked her to inquire as to whether the boogie is there. She's responding to that. That somebody is this guy. I want to find out if the boogie's there. Let me know. So she's trying to get that information for him. Now she's talking a little more, he switched it up. He says G4, Joe, Mr., and IC. And we know some of these people are there, right? We know that Jamar Rowland is there. We hear about Joseph Arrington. These are all the gang members. That's all BMG. He says time. He wants to know time. He's working on these details. Now it's 9:30 p.m. And he makes it really clear that Olivia should delete the messages. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's planning. Thinks he's smarter than her. Tell her to delete him so he doesn't get caught. And she responds, I already did. So then, once he knows and he's getting intel on the other gang, he can get his friends lined up so they can pick up a car from Serena and take it out there. Maybe nobody will even realize it was them because they're using a different car. So we know that see this conversation going on between him and Olivia where they're trying to set up this car when they're going to get the car. You know, and Olivia she's not innocent in this, right? She's letting him know, hey, you know, people around here acting weird. Like, she's kind of playing into these dynamics. And his response is, we figuring is out, literally, so we can be on the cool side. What is he saying there? He's watching out, right? This is all the dynamics. Somebody's there, we want to make sure we're on the cool side. We don't want to draw any attention. Why not? Because he knows what he's going to do. He's not stupid. He knows. So this is 12:07. She says at 12:08 a.m., I hear you, but are you coming or not? And that's the last text we see between the two of them until after, it's not after the shooting, but it's after he's supposed to return the car. So we know that he gets the car roughly a little bit after midnight. There's the car. And we know that by 12:51, they're driving that car around Villa Capri. We have the benefit of some video clips. They're hard to see. We don't even have to guess. That's the most, I don't know what's worse. Just how blatant it is, how blatant to put that on social media. We know they're in Villa Capri. You can see that when you compare this right here, 12:51, you can see that compared to a crime scene picture there in Villa Capri. If you're not familiar with that area, you can tell when you compare that video to pictures that we are taking. You can see this car, again, 12:51, this is from that clip. There's Serena's car in the crime scene garage at Fort Wayne Police Department. You can see, features like this. I'm not a car person, but car people recognize features like that across different vehicles. When you look at this, you can see that she has a unique, material on her seats, and that material is consistent in that video in there. If you had any doubt, obviously we know the time. We have the benefit of the time and date, access information from Detective Mike. video, but you can see it's clearly Serena's car. And at 12:53, another video is created. Get attention. If we weren't sure, it is dark in that car, Detective Johnson thinks you can make out the defendant, but if you're not sure, you can even rely on Detective McDonald, who did a cellular analysis of his phone location, and at this time the phone is on, it's communicating with the network, and it puts him right in the location of Villa Capri at 12:59 a.m. So there they are. They're trolling. This is that premeditated. They're going over there and they're looking for Boog. Meanwhile, Serena is starting to panic because she has a car, she lets her mom drive it, it's her car she's worked hard for, and guess who has not brought it back yet, even though they were supposed to? This defendant and Chris. Now we know that there's a phone call, and that's maybe one of the hardest things to understand about rival gang behavior, is why in the world they would call each other. It's so interesting, right? If you hate each other, you're doing all this social media communications, and then you're going to call him on social media. But we know that they do. Elijah says, my brother gets a call from the defendant around the time we're leaving. We hear that on the other side too. We hear there's a call. There's a call going back and forth. So now they know for sure he's there. So then the defendant tells Olivia, hey, we're going to drop off the guns. We'll be right there with the car. And then guess what he does? There it is. It's at 1:36 a.m. And then he turns his phone off right at the time of the shooting. 1:37 to 2:07 a.m. Did it magically die and then he found a power cord at 2:07? I guess you could try to believe that. Seems ridiculous. Meanwhile, we know the other defendants' phones are situated at Bowser very conveniently. They're not stupid. So then the defendant, Chris, Lamont, and Corian now head back to Villa Capri and Serena's car because they know Boogie's there. They know exactly where they're going. Sergeant Deshay says Villa Capri is a common BMG territory at this time. And we see this video we saw this morning. It's about 1:46 when they travel through this storage unit location. Once you compare that to Serena's car, it becomes a little clearer. Of course, we can't match the plates. It's just not that clear a video, but you can see, boy, it sure does look like her car, doesn't it? At 1:46. It goes. It travels again across. It's about 1:47. We know from the map that that storage space goes directly south to Fox Point Trail to Villa Capri. And the first 911 calls began coming in at 1:50. So right there, minutes, within minutes, that car has pulled into Villa Capri and begun shooting. Those individuals have left the car. And then by 1:51, we see vehicle activity over there. We can't say for sure that that's the same car, but it sure looks like it is. Or, I mean, it looks like there's no other vehicles around. So it's very probable. And of course, they're going to get the heck out of there before a million police officers come pulling up to the scene. So that happens that quick, within minutes. So they bring back this car to Serena and Olivia, but of course now we know it has bullet holes in it. There they are at the marathon. Olivia sees the bullet holes. She says to Serena, shoot, there's bullet holes. They pull into the marathon. And Chris says, hey, we were in a shootout, but it wasn't at Villa Capri. That wasn't us. Because the girls know about Villa Capri at this point. If you remember correctly, Olivia's on the phone. She's on FaceTime with Lexi, Serena's sister, who says, hey, we're driving past Villa Capri. Is your, I think it was her friend or her niece or somebody lives there. Is she okay? Because we can tell there's a huge police presence. It looks like a homicide. These are street people. They know what a homicide looks like when a million police cars show up with crime tape. Right? Unfortunately, that's something that they have seen. Meanwhile, behavior before, during, and after the offense to find out if they're working together in concert with each other. Because the truth is, you don't get to join a group of people, go try to kill somebody, and then hold up your hands and say, hey, I don't know if it was me who shot the final bullet, so I'm not responsible. It doesn't work that way. The law says you work together to do something, and you accomplish that goal, you're all responsible for it. You have this instruction. These are the elements to focus on. So let's talk about before, during, and after. How do we know these four are knee-deep in this the whole stinking time? They're all together at Bowser. We know that. We hear that from the girls. They're all there together, and the defendant Chris are setting things up. Then they go driving around Villa Capri. Again, we don't see the driver. We can assume that's probably Chris because he's the driver. He's the only one that had a license that told Serena he would drive because of his license. So we can assume he's in the car and we can identify the other three from those videos. But they're in that car an hour before looking for the Parkers. What do they do during? This is Elijah Parker. And we're going to talk about Elijah Parker for a minute. Because Elijah Parker is somebody who he's in a spot where he's got to make a decision, right? Does he continue taking guns, getting arrested, and incarcerated for having guns to try to protect himself and stay with his gang life? Or does he make a deal? And does he come in and does he tell what happened in this environment with all these dynamics? That is a hard decision. He says, we were walking, listening to a song, and I heard something that sounded like shots, kind of just ambushed them. They're not prepared for it. My brother was already down when I turned around. I cannot imagine what it's like to watch your brother get shot in front of you. Elijah grabs his brother's guns, he's honest about that, and I started shooting back. That's not a surprise. We know there's two guns there. They've got their DNA. We know that those are the guns that Elijah and Avion had. But boy, look at all those casings. They shot back in response, but this was such a planned ambush. They didn't have a prayer. Not a prayer. That's the thing about guns, right? You can have them all day long, but if somebody sneaks up behind you and starts shooting at you, it's not going to do a heck of a lot of good. So Elijah says, I tried to pick my brother up, and there's shots from behind me. And this is really the saddest part. Elijah says the defendant and Chris were together in front, and Monty and Corian were behind me. They planned that, right? They planned that. They parked that car somewhere, they got out, and they surrounded those Parkers so that they could accomplish this job. That is so very planned. Avion Parker is shot at least 3 times per Dr. Wagner. And he's shot in the back. In the back. We know there's a total of 5 or 6 guns here. At least 5, maybe 6. 2 of which are the victims. So that leaves 3 to 4 guns remaining. And that is the only way. That's initially how Detective Johnson knows, hey, I know it's not just Terrance Sanders and Chris Recht. There's got to be another person there at least probably, because it's unlikely that there's somebody else, that they're shooting 2 guns at the same time. Not that it's impossible, but it's unlikely. That's his tip-off. And that's why it's interesting that Elijah tells him for the first time, guess what, there were 4 people. And that's not something that he would have known. That's not something Detective even knew. How does Elijah know that? Well, because he was there. That's direct evidence of murder. And that's exactly what it was. He saw these 4 individuals kill his brother right in front of him. And it was a catastrophic gunshot wound. Catastrophic. It killed him so quick, he didn't have a chance. So Elijah says, I shot back at Monty crying behind me. I get shot in the leg. They run to a car, and I even shoot at the car. He's trying, and you can see in that pile of ammunition that's pretty close to the tree, a lot of those are not shell casings, they're cartridges. They're unfired rounds. So you can imagine that he's scrambling to try to shoot these guns, shoot back these people that are after them. And And none of those 4 get shot. None of them. And the car is shot, but interestingly enough, it's shot from someone who's probably shooting from inside the car. Because it's shot toward the rearview mirror, not at it. The bullet wound is going in, or the gunshots are going into that mirror and not coming at it from outside. He says, I stayed by my brother's side. The police had to force me to leave to go into the ambulance. And everybody describes his demeanor. We saw him on the stand. He's not going to come in this courtroom in front of all these people and break down and sob. Can you imagine what that would be like for him? But those people at the scene saw it. He was emotionally distraught. His brother is shot to death in front of him, and they're kids. Just kids. His condition starts to deteriorate. So the medics are kind of up in their care. They're like, shoot, this didn't look that serious at first, but it is, right? His condition's deteriorating. Sandra rides in the ambulance with him. The other medic, Christopher Harry, says, we had to take him to one of 2 trauma centers because that's how serious his injury was. He has to go to Lutheran or to Parkview North. He can't go to just any hospital. He has a life-threatening injury. Life-threatening. Could have killed him if he had not gotten prompt medical care. That's attempted murder. This guy, along with Corian, Chris, and Lamont, absolutely discharged a firearm in his direction with the intent to kill him. It's also battery with a deadly weapon. They knowingly or intentionally touched him in a rude, insolent, angry manner while armed with a deadly weapon. So what happens after? Well, Elijah Parker trying to go get care, and you wonder why he doesn't trust police, the system. He's afraid. Because he goes to the hospital to try to get care, and the suspects show up there to try and finish the job, in his opinion. He says that the hospital had surveillance video, and they put it on lockdown. Now, whether that truly happened or not, I don't know, but certainly to Elijah it was real. He absolutely believed that they were here to hunt him down, and you know what? I think there's a little corroboration for that. Because we know this defendant texts Marquise Billingsley to let him know that it's done. Right? He's gone. At 2:20. Wow, he didn't wait long to deliver that message. And then he says, Dometic's heading that way. And initially I read this to be toward Villa Capri, but in hindsight, based on the time, I think it actually means that they're leaving Villa Capri. Now, why would he tell, and that struck me for a minute, why would you tell Marquise Billingsley that the Dometics were heading that way? Why would he care? Unless he's one of the people that went to the hospital. I don't know. Maybe he did. Maybe he was. He's a confirmed BSG member. He's in knee deep, part of it. So Elijah Parker risks his own life to get the heck out of that hospital. Whether right or wrong, he checks himself out before he's received as much care and gets out of there. Imagine being so afraid of the dynamics that you're willing to risk your own care. That's how scared he is. That's how real this street stuff is. Meanwhile, Chris Recht has a picture of Avion lying dead. We looked at that, but I want to point something out about this. It was blocked by Instagram on September 13th. Here it is. When you zoom in, this is the original post. This is not a picture by somebody that's close to the Parkers. This is the other side. Sharp down, laughing faces. And that's what it was. Apparently it's not enough to kill people. You gotta go and brag about it too. So we know that there's this BSG rap video of the killing posted on YouTube in November of 23. Mentions Boogie Boo and Elijah. Elijah Park. We're going to put him in that blend. Which Detective Johnson tells us put him in the blender is kill him, right? That is criminal organization activity. It wasn't enough to kill Avion and to try to kill Elijah, but it has to be bragged about. Because as Sergeant Deshays testified, for For you to rise up in the gang, you gotta get credit for your criminal activity, for your shooting, for your violence. Otherwise, nobody knows you did it. How are you gonna get street credit if you don't brag about it? So if he isn't responsible, if this is all, some big thing, he didn't go to Villa Capri, he didn't shoot Avion and Elijah, then how do you explain how Elijah would have known it was them who shot him and fled in a dark car? How would Elijah have known that if this defendant was Serena's car and these people weren't there? Just coincidentally, that same night, unrelated, this defendant, Chris, happened to borrow a car from Serena, bring it back with bullet holes? Come on. And this is a huge one. Elijah put himself at risk. This is a street culture against talking, right? We don't cooperate, we don't talk to the police, we don't testify. Can you imagine having to sit up here and put yourself at risk? That's what he did. Is he going to do that for the wrong people? He says, at the hospital they try to talk to me, but I don't tell them who the shooters are. I don't trust them to protect me. That's his reality. Can you blame him? He's scared to death. Finally, in January, things are escalating. Maybe he realizes, God, carrying a gun is either going to land me dead or worse, or I'm going to do something else. Finally, maybe I want to help. Let's catch the shooters. He has to make a decision. And he does. What a horrible decision to have to make. If this is not his fault and he's not responsible, why is he working with Olivia to figure out where BMG is? There's no explanation for that. There's no reason he would be needing to do that unless he was intending to show up there and shoot at him. And specifically where Boogie was, the target of this. Why would he phone? I mean, this is so common sense. To turn your phone off right at the time of the shooting? Come on, and turn it right back on after? They say they're in a shootout. They admit that because they have bullets, but then Detective Johnson tells us, guess what? There aren't some other shootouts at this 1 hour of time in this area of time. Come on. We know exactly where they were. And why would he continue to taunt Elijah even after this case is filed? Look at that face. It's taunting. Lunging at him. Even 5 days before the trial. Telling him to let the streets handle it. This is the result. Let the streets handle it. Look what happens when we let the streets handle it. Don't take it into court. It's a game way, right? We'll just take it out in the streets and then continue. Never say a word. Absolutely planning an ambush against these brothers. Absolutely. Unquestionably. Absolutely premeditated. We don't have to prove that to you, but there is no doubt this is premeditated. So you might be asking yourself, we have 4 co-defendants, 4 people charged. Which one shot Avion? Which one hit Elijah? Guess what? It does not matter. It doesn't matter and it can't matter, because if that's the law, people can just do things in groups and get away with it. And that's not fair and it's unsafe. It has to not matter who actually pulled that trigger. We know they probably all had guns and they were all firing. But whoever fired that shot, it doesn't matter, because you are criminally responsible for the acts with each other that are the probable and natural consequences. And in this case, it's pretty simple because we know that's exactly the goal, right? They all know the goal going in, they try to achieve the goal together, and unfortunately they're successful in 50% of the goal. That's murder. This defendant is absolutely responsible for his part in killing Avion Parker, trying to kill Elijah Parker, and shooting Elijah Parker in the leg, and for doing all this to advance the criminal gang, the criminal organization. It's It's almost 2 years ago that Avion lost his life in Villa Capri. Almost 2 years ago that Elijah almost lost his life in Villa Capri. But now it is finally time for some accountability. You've heard all the evidence. There's an overwhelming amount. Gosh, I think we have 500 some exhibits, tons and tons of information. We ask you on behalf of the state of Indiana, where you don't get to just go handle your problems in the street. And we ask you on behalf of the Parkers to look at all that evidence, to do your job as jurors. We're confident on behalf of the state of Indiana that when you do, there's only one logical conclusion. It's really sad. It's just really sad. But that this defendant, along with the other three, set out to kill the Parkers. And as I said, they accomplished half their goal, almost accomplished the other half. We ask you to hold him accountable by finding him guilty